I've heard so many different encounters and I've talked to so many different people. There's some things that really stand out, that you've seen, they seen a figure in the distance, right? They didn't seem like it was aggressive or there was any concern. They didn't have any fear, no feeling of dread or anything like that. But then there's sometimes where they're being pelted with rocks.
Sometimes they come here and get water.
My dad, knowing this, had been going up to that area for a couple weeks, actually, and he was finding footprint tracks up there, hair samples.
Can't see much up through here. I hear the brush popping and stuff. Oh, there he goes.
Forests, mountains, and remote camps hide secrets no one can explain. Tonight, 6 unforgettable encounters expose what watches from the darkness. Creatures that follow, vanish, and leave no trace. From Bigfoot lurking in the shadows to unearthly forces and impossible sightings, these stories push the limits of reality, leaving behind fear, awe, and questions that linger long after the night ends. On Travel Channel, every journey tells a story, and this one is deeply personal. Michael Freeman ventures into the wilderness, following the footsteps of his father, Paul Freeman, whose life changed forever in 1982. That first encounter with a legendary creature sparked a 15-year obsession. Now, Michael retraces the same rugged terrain, asking the question that started it all. What truly happened here? And is it still out there? Paul Freeman spent long stretches in these woods, convinced the land itself whispered secrets.
My name is Michael Freeman. Paul Freeman is my dad in 1982. That's when he had his first encounter with Bigfoot. And that kind of set off a 15-year obsession, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, go around this bush here, see what's going on here.
Each trip revealed new clues, fresh imprints, unusual traces, signs of deliberate movement. He filmed every discovery, building a growing archive of unanswered questions. Yet the source remained elusive. Clear signs appeared, then silence. Whatever lurked seemed to watch from just beyond view.
Now, Deduck Spring, where this victim was taken, was one of the viable water sources that was still being used by animals.
Sometimes they come here and get water.
My dad, knowing this, had been going up to that area for a couple weeks, actually, and he was finding footprint tracks up there, hair samples. He had been taking his camera. He was filming the collection of evidence.
Wow, looks like he's pretty fresh.
He would find stuff, but he would never have any sightings. And he would go back, the next day or the day after, and the same thing would happen over and over.
Yeah, he's went back up the road, come down the road.
Paranormal researcher Rosemary Ellen Guiley notes that Paul Freeman's legacy comes from evidence that could be examined, not debated. The footprint casts he recovered showed fine ridge patterns.
The valuable thing that Paul Freeman contributed to the field really came from his casts of footprint, and they have been examined by experts. He was able to capture what are called dermal ridges in his casts. This is an indication of striations in the skin.
Can't see much up through here. I hear the brush popping and stuff. Oh, there he goes.
Consistent with skin texture, setting them apart from ordinary tracks. Following the trail deeper, Freeman documented every step, the footprints leading him from certainty toward the unknown. He had seen strange things before, but nothing like this night. As darkness fell, Paul Freeman pushed deeper, following sounds that felt deliberate. These woods held a long history of mystery, and now they seemed anything but empty. Whatever moved beyond the brush did so with purpose, turning a routine investigation into a moment that would haunt him long after he returned.
He was pale in color. You could tell that something had upset him and something had bothered him.
Oh, God.
It's the only time in my life, including the day that he died, that I ever saw my dad scared of anything. And that right there, to me, I don't have to see one. That's the only proof I'll ever need for the existence of this animal, just knowing my dad and how that affected him.
The figure moved with fluid, instinctive grace. Nothing stiff, nothing forced. Its size and proportions were disturbingly consistent, impossible to fake. Later, those closest to Paul spoke not of what he saw, but how it changed him. A man known for strength and fearlessness, someone untouchable to his son, was left visibly shaken. For the family, that reaction mattered more than any photo or footage.
People can be skeptical, but you cannot deny the impact that these sightings have had on the people who saw the activity.
I mean, what can you say? You know, your dad comes home and he's got something like this on video, and you watch it and you rewatch it and then you watch it again and you say, well, that's not a bear. You know, it's not a man. It's nothing I've ever seen. And yeah, I mean, it was exciting. It was an exciting time.
Oh, there he goes.
Whatever Paul encountered broke the image of invincibility, and that was proof enough. In the shadows, something moves. Tall, upright, impossibly still. Its coat is thick and wild, unlike any known animal. The camera rises slowly, revealing a presence that seems aware of its observer. A head shifts with quiet intention. Every subtle movement hints at intelligence, patience, and a power beyond comprehension. Alive, watching, refusing to reveal itself fully.
This is probably the most dynamic Bigfoot footage that I've ever seen.
The movements of this creature look very natural.
Doesn't look like a man in a suit. The height looks right, the weight looks right. I feel like this would be difficult for a man to hoax all on his own and the word not get out.
Oh, God. Hear my heart beating 40 miles an hour.
I believe that he saw Bigfoot. I know my dad. I grew up with my dad. I know what kind of person he is.
The figure had the unmistakable hallmarks of Bigfoot. Towering, primate-like, with a broad, dome-shaped head and massive frame. Beneath the dense fur, a lighter area hinted at a bare chest or hands held before it, adding an uncanny awareness to the encounter. The evidence was undeniable. Not a hoax, not a story from the past. Something still moves through these mountains.
She frightened my dad, who I saw as being Superman, basically. You know, growing up, big guy, tough guy, brave guy, someone who wasn't afraid of any man or beast, you know, on this earth, to actually be rattled and scared by something. I don't need any more proof than that.
Gotta be tracks here somewhere in this road. Oh, here's one.
For somebody to devote their whole life to a field like Bigfoot searching and squatching, to finally get something on camera is a huge deal.
Yeah, they've been all over this in here.
An elusive presence known only as Bigfoot. Witnessing it, even briefly, changes everything, leaving a mark that can never be forgotten. After decades of footprints, fleeting glimpses, and undeniable encounters, the forest keeps its secrets. The question isn't whether Bigfoot exists, it's whether anyone can face what's out there and return unchanged. Will Michael Freeman uncover the truth? On D-Max UK, Bryce hunts the truth behind the most mysterious wilderness sightings. This journey takes him deep into the forest to meet Rob, a lifelong member of the Chippewa tribe. Unlike fleeting encounters, Rob and his father experienced something they could not explain. A close, chilling encounter with a creature they believe was Bigfoot. Deep in the dense forest, Bryce listens as Rob recounts the moment everything changed. While hunting with his father, heavy footsteps suddenly closed in from behind. The presence moved alongside them, then exploded through the brush.
Hey, thanks for meeting me out here.
Oh, yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
This place is incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty thick out here.
So, I understand you have an encounter story that you'd be willing to share with me.
Yeah, absolutely. One was when I was hunting with my dad. And as we were going down this deer trail, we started hearing heavy footsteps coming up behind us. And at the time, it sounded like it was coming down the same trail we were walking. It kind of caught up to us and then started paralleling us. So it kind of would push through these bushes into the opening where we were at.
Mm-hmm.
They saw it. Massive shoulders, a broad chest, followed by a deep, bone-shaking roar that echoed through the trees.
And that's when we saw it. I mean, we could just see just big shoulders and chest, and all of a sudden, we heard this roar. I mean, it was a rib cage rattling roar. It felt like the tree shook, and it went right through your body.
The creature ran, then dropped into a wide squat, leaving both men frozen, haunted by an encounter they would never forget. Bryce asks about its size. Rob hesitates, then explains his 6-foot-tall father barely reached its waist, making it at least 8, maybe 9 feet tall, with a massive barrel-shaped chest and powerful frame. Every detail is burned into Rob's memory, and Bryce feels the weight of that presence, as if the forest itself still holds the giant within its shadows.
Oh, right. Rob, when I usually work with witnesses, at this point I'm a little nervous because I'm about to show you what I've been working on. But I'm actually pretty confident this time around because you really remembered a lot of details. So, you know, I'm really excited for you to see this. Are you ready to see this guy again?
Yeah, let's see it. Holy smokes. Yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
That looks like what you saw, Rob.
Yeah, yeah. That's incredible. It's crazy. It's like you pulled it right out of my brain. That's exactly how the eyebrows looked. They went up like that and then back down. Wow.
The encounter still grips Rob like a living shadow, every detail seared into memory. Bryce and the team take a rare step, bringing in a trained forensic artist to capture the creature exactly as Rob saw it. Nothing is dismissed. Every detail could bring them one step closer to proving the existence of something the world has long doubted. The memory lingered. Something massive had moved through the forest, leaving an impression that refused to fade. Bryce brought in Michael Montoya, a master forensic artist known for turning fleeting memories into lifelike sketches.
I'm completely blown away by my conversation with Rob. The fact that he can recall so many details of his encounter is truly amazing.
It's like it's just burned in my brain.
Really?
I don't know if it's because of the adrenaline, but it's like a photo image in my brain.
Wow.
Yeah.
You said you might have had another encounter as well?
Yeah, so later on, in 1992, was the year after I graduated.
So this is 10 years later?
Yeah, this was 10 years later. So I got together with some friends.
As Rob described the creature, Montoya captured every shadow and shape. With each stroke, the image seemed to breathe, emerging from the depths of the forest itself. By the end, what was once a memory now stared back from the page, just as real and unsettling as the day it happened. The creature was unmistakably human-like, more human than ape. Its chest jutted forward like a ledge, sloping sharply from the collarbone, while massive trapezius muscles stretched almost to its ears. Every detail lingered in Rob's memory, vivid and undeniable, as if burned into his mind.
Something like a professional sketch artist draw what you saw?
Sure. I never thought about that.
Rob's memory of his Bigfoot encounter is so strong that it gives us this incredible opportunity to bring in a trained artist to create an image of Bigfoot that just for once is not blurry.
This is exactly what I was looking for.
But we can't rule anything out. We need to think outside the box. We need to try everything. Any tiny bit of information.
The image of it in the forest felt alive again, tangible and haunting, impossible to shake. When the sketch appeared, Rob's reaction was immediate. Astonishment etched across his face.
And his trap muscles on behind actually came up to where his ears were.
Interesting.
Man, when you zero in on just what these things look like, it's incredible the amount of detail a witness remembers.
Yeah.
Every detail matched his memory, down to the sweep of the eyebrows and the shape of the face. Seeing it again brought back the fear, the awe, the full magnitude of the encounter. For the first time, what had lived only in his mind now stood before him, vivid and undeniable. Now, with the sketch staring back at them, every detail vivid, every shadow alive, one question remains.
How does it make you feel seeing that?
It's just like, it just all comes rushing back. I mean, I feel like I'm shaking right now, just telling that story. That's amazing.
I was really blown away by Michael's sketch because it's one thing to hear about a witness's Bigfoot encounter, and it's another thing altogether to see the creature they were talking about. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Could this be the closest anyone has ever come to proving that something truly extraordinary still walks these forests? On Small Town Monsters, investigators explore tales that start ordinary and spiral into the unexplainable. Chris Spencer and his son camped alone at Skamania County Campground during spring break. By day, they found twisted maple vines, broken branches, and a massive impression in the ground.
First people in, and only people in the campground, and we found a vine maple that was limb twist broke, an 18 by 9 inch impression in the ground. We found other branches snapped off of fir trees 12 feet up. And that night, and we thought, oh, cool, you know, didn't think.
But that night, terror struck. Something entered their campsite and forcefully grabbed their tent. What happened remains a mystery, leaving them with a chilling story no one can fully explain. Alone in the night, Chris heard movement circling the campground, two unseen presences testing him while his children slept.
Was in the campground, there's at least two moving back and forth around the camp. I think they were just messing with us, but around 4 in the morning, wow, it was like a rock on a tree, knock, everything went quiet. I got out of the tent and built up a fire and waited for my kid to get up. After that, that's when I decided to start doing stuff like that.
Frozen inside the tent, weapon across his chest, he couldn't move. A sharp knock rang through the trees, then silence. When he finally emerged, he built a fire and waited. That night changed everything. Chris knew he had to find answers. John Sheridan, a seasoned investigator, has spent years listening to those who've encountered the unexplained. Some describe distant figures, calm and almost harmless, as if the forest itself is watching.
It's a difficult question because it depends. You know, I've heard so many different encounters and I've talked to so many different people. There's some things that really stand out. That you've seen, you know, they've seen a figure in the distance, right? Or it seemed friendly, and they didn't seem like it was aggressive or there was any concern. They didn't have any fear, no feeling of dread or anything like that. But then there's sometimes where they're being pelted with rocks.
Others share darker tales. Rocks thrown from nowhere, invisible forces stalking them, or strange disturbances at home. For Sheridan, each story unveils a hidden world where moments of calm can suddenly turn into chilling menace. Chris Brinker, known for investigating the unexplained, often hears stories from people who never thought they'd have one to share. Anyone spending time in these woods seems to have at least one tale worth telling. Even longtime friends now come forward with experiences they kept secret.
I'm usually, because when I first started, I had to really learn all the other animals too, so I listened while I looked, but most of the target subject vocalizations, they fall in a certain hertz range, and a lot of times they'll look similar to human vocalizations, and so I look at a narrow hertz range, and when I see something that doesn't match up with the known animals, then I stop and I look at it, because I look at it visually just like David does, and it's something over time. I've been doing it since 2015. It's 2021 now.
One recalled parking with a girl when two glowing red eyes stared from the trees, vanishing as mysteriously as they appeared.
I've had multiple friends at work, talk about different situations. It seems like, anybody that spends any time in the woods around here has an experience, at least one that they talk about. People that you never would have thought, and you mentioned it. Now that I do the investigating and they know that I do that, some people come forward and be like, oh yeah, I have something that happened to me that I never told anybody about. I had a friend who was out parking with a girl and had two red eyes that he caught staring at him from in the trees that just disappeared.
For Brinker, these moments show just how thin the line is between ordinary and the inexplicable. As night fell, Rebecca Slick and her group settled into sleeping bags, chatter fading. Suddenly, a tree crashed down. It wasn't just a simple camping trip anymore. With no wind to explain the fall, Rebecca realized something unnatural might be nearby.
Bed, we're all in our sleeping bags, and all of a sudden the chatter of us starting to die down to go to bed is broken by this tree fall. That changed the game, because it went from just, okay, we're gonna just be out here camping, to, oh my goodness, there's no wind, It's possible that this could be natural.
In an instant, a peaceful night in the woods became unsettling. A possible creature lurking just beyond sight. Jody Fiorganes recounted the terrifying experience his mother endured. A presence more than a shape, massive and dark, filling the space around her vehicle. It struck suddenly, a violent impact on the front of the car, a jolt along the side, and a force that touched her hair, snapping her head back.
You have others that we think of as being very passive. But as to what's creating those situations, what's causing those reports to manifest in the way they do, I don't know that there's any conclusive answer to that, at least at this point. We do tend to see, at least in most places, that sightings spike during the times of the year that people are outdoors, which makes sense. But as far as what time of the year, what location, what climate, if that makes them more aggressive, less aggressive, you do hear quite a few stories coming out of Florida, the skunk ape, sometimes Louisiana, the Honey Island area.
The smell alone suggested it was no ordinary animal. Even without a clear view, its closeness made it undeniable. She had come face to face with something extraordinary. His mother wasn't afraid. She believed the contact wasn't an attack, just curiosity. That single mysterious touch sparked a question haunting Jody.
Just given the behaviors and the things we're talking about, they seem to be pretty consistent and they're reported. Ape Canyon, if we are to believe the story of the miners, that was done as a sort of aggressive response to being shot at, or there was a curiosity factor with if the cabin was actually there. When the cabin was built, there seemed to be encounters with these creatures and the miners started shooting at them. And if we're to believe that story, maybe that tells us that they were curious, what are people doing in this really hard to reach place? And then it turned into aggressive behavior. So that was, I think, situational again.
What was out there? Watching, testing, trying to understand them. For him, proving her right became more than theory. It became a challenge to confront the unknown. On Wild Man of the Wilderness, every encounter begins as an ordinary moment until the darkness answers back. One quiet night in North Texas, while arriving at his grandparents' rural home, a young witness, David, stepped out of the car and into the unknown. Behind the house stretched acres of dense woods, silent and unlit. As he stood near the wall, something large shifted in the shadows.
Carport, but it was an older house, and it was really tight, so my grandfather would always make me get out of the car in the driveway. And I got out, and it was dark, and he had a retaining wall at one end of his driveway, and I saw something over there move around, and I thought it was just a big black dog. So I started walking over there towards it.
At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a big dog. But in the stillness of that night, the movement felt deliberate, watchful, and that was only the beginning. As he moved closer, he caught a glimpse of something strange and fleeting. At first, he thought it might be a giant bird with tattered feathers hanging from what looked like wings.
And as I got closer, I thought for a split second maybe it was some kind of giant bird, because it looked like it had wings with feathers hanging down. And it was down on all fours, crouched down, trying to stay in the shadows behind this retaining wall. And I got right up to the edge of it and looked down there, and
the creature stayed low on all fours, pressing itself into the shadows behind the retaining wall, as if trying to vanish from sight. When it finally turned its gaze toward him, his first thought was that it was snarling like the family dog. But in the next instant, a chilling realization struck him. It wasn't snarling at all. It was smiling.
And first I thought it was wrinkling its lips, because we had a dog and it was always growling and wrinkling its lips at me. But then I realized, and this is all happening very fast, that it was smiling at me. And with these, my dad played the piano, and the best way I can describe it is that the teeth look like the yellow keys on the piano.
The face was unnervingly human, so real that his mind couldn't process it. Then the creature slowly raised a hand and beckoned him closer, a gesture so deliberate it froze him in place. Panic surged through him. He screamed and ran toward the house. His grandfather rushed outside. But when he returned, he insisted he hadn't seen a thing. That night became his first unforgettable encounter with something wild, intelligent, and terrifyingly real.
Just like this. And I had been kind of frozen looking at this thing, but when it did that, you know, I screamed and started running in, and my grandfather had already gone in the house, and I told him that there was a big hairy man over there. And he looked concerned, grabbed his 12 gauge, ran out there, and I heard a shot go off, and he came back in and said he didn't see anything.
He had tried to push it from his mind, to forget the encounter entirely, but some things refused to stay buried. That summer, he found himself at camp, joining one of the camp's legendary Brazos River trips. Their journey led them to a remote campsite near a place called Chick Bend, not far from the shadow of Kyle Mountain. Locals whispered that the area had its own strange history, strange sightings, and unexplained events that even the nearby scout camp couldn't ignore. Little did he know, the wilderness there had a way of keeping its secrets close. Until now. The companion he shared the tent and the canoe with spoke up, his voice tight with disbelief. He had seen it again, higher up the trail. A tree loomed nearby, and without hesitation, they climbed it, scrambling to the top for a better view.
You know, one guy said it was a wolf, some guy said it was a bear, another guy said, no, it looks like a big monkey. And that was it. And then the next morning, we were all packing up, and this was probably 9 o'clock in the morning.
From above, they heard it. Something moving fast, pounding through the underbrush, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. They tore down the trail in pursuit, hearts racing. He was in the lead, rounding a jagged rock outcrop, then slammed into something solid. He felt it before he even saw it. Something alive, immense, brushing against him in the darkness, trying to escape its grip only to catch the glint of its eyes and hear a guttural roar that shook the air. Just then, his friend appeared, wide-eyed, and froze at the sight. Fear took over completely, and in a split second...
So I kind of did a crab walk backwards because I was on my back and got up and I screamed. And then this thing roared. And just about that time, this friend of mine, he came running up. He saw it too. And we were so terrified that we jumped off of that cliff.
They both plunged off the edge of the cliff, tumbling into the unknown, the creature's presence still echoing in the night. That night would mark the moment the wilderness revealed a predator unlike anything they had ever imagined. It didn't take long for him to notice. A new kind of visitor was slipping into town, bold and unafraid. Pets disappeared, trash bins were overturned, and he began calling them the urban feet. The same pattern was emerging. Deer, raccoons, even predators were wandering into human spaces.
So that kind of started my journey on this thing. You know, I started going down to the library and reading about this, and then I had seen, I can't remember the magazine, but I was down at the library. They had a magazine that had the 67 Patterson Gimlin, you know, and they were talking about it then and talking about the footprint. So I was like, okay.
Not long ago, a mountain lion killed a deer in the vacant, proving the line between wilderness and town was vanishing fast. If creatures like this are slipping from the shadows into towns, watching, hunting, and disappearing without a trace, how much of the wilderness we think we know is really still wild, and how close are these? The YouTube channel Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, is known for uncovering hidden truths behind legendary creatures. But for this episode, Rob Stevens shared a deeply personal story. A lifelong abductee, he recounted experiences with Bigfoot that were far from distant sightings, intimate, close, and impossible to ignore. On a quiet, shadowed night, he described encounters that blurred the line between fear and fascination, revealing just how unsettling the world of the unexplained can truly be.
I'm a lifelong abductee, on top of everything else. Yep.
It's surprising you have, experiences with Bigfoot too.
I have many. That's what kills me. Very close ones, too. None of this, like, oh, I saw it way out there and it ran. No, mine are very intimate and close.
His experiences span the mysterious spectrum, from elusive Sasquatch encounters to unexplainable paranormal events. He claims to have communicated telepathically, not only with otherworldly beings, but with Sasquatch itself. In his view, many who are obsessed with UFOs may unknowingly carry the mark of abduction, their curiosity a shadow of suppressed encounters. Through careful questioning, he often uncovers hints of forgotten or hidden experiences, suggesting that some researchers' estimates that nearly 10% of the US population may have been taken by otherworldly beings at some point might not be far from the truth.
Everything from Sasquatch to paranormal events. I've actually had telepathy as well with aliens and Sasquatch. A lot of people who are obsessed with UFOs are actually abductees and they don't even know it. That's why I have a tendency to ask them questions, and then a lot of times I'm like, yeah, potentially you have been abducted. So there's some estimates out there that about 10% of the US population's been abducted at some point.
He explained that the process, as he experienced it, was precise and deliberate, centered on the eyes. According to his account, a tall gray entity would move directly toward a person, fixing them with an intense gaze until consciousness faded. In one rare moment, however, he claimed to awaken mid-trance. From that state, he observed others standing with their eyes open, fully, unresponsive, and obedient, moving only as they were silently directed. It was not sleep, he emphasized, but control.
A tall gray will go straight up right to your forehead with his huge eyes, and you black out. However, because I woke up in one of the trances, I could see that everybody else was hypnotized with their eyes open. But they were hypnotized. They weren't doing anything but whatever they were led to do.
The witness insisted that Sasquatch are not a single uniform presence, but exist in distinct types. Some, he revealed, have inhabited the Earth far longer than humanity, ancient indigenous beings who claim this planet as their own. According to his account, these creatures are multidimensional, able to slip between realities and vanish into parallel worlds. His conviction, he said, comes from first-hand experience, a moment when he and his partner crossed into what he described as a multiverse. Whether they ever truly returned to their original reality remains an unsettling mystery, one reinforced by an ever-growing chain of extraordinary facts.
There are different types of Sasquatch. You have the ones that have been here for a long time, longer than humanity according to them, that are indigenous to this planet, and they're multidimensional is what I believe. Yeah. They have the ability to teleport into a parallel universe. And I know for a fact they exist because one time me and my other half literally entered a multiverse. And I don't know if we ever came back to ours.
There was one subject he admitted could not be dismissed or softened. According to his account, the existence of non-human Sasquatch entities was undeniable. He pointed to Pennsylvania as a focal region, an area repeatedly linked to unusual activity. Over the years, numerous reports from the state have described unexplained aerial craft descending into remote terrain, followed by sightings of Sasquatch emerging, or, more disturbingly, being observed in direct association with these objects. To him, the pattern was too consistent to ignore.
The one thing I cannot help you with is alien Bigfoots. They are real. There are Sasquatches. You'll find them in PA mostly, in Pennsylvania. A lot of sightings of UFOs bringing down Sasquatches or Sasquatches seen on UFOs.
He noticed immediately that the whites of the creature's eyes were not normal, luminous, and unmistakably alive. The sight triggered instant panic. At the time, he had no frame of reference. He had never heard of Sasquatch or anything like it. Confronted with something entirely outside his understanding, his mind raced with a single, overwhelming question. What was he looking at?
Whites of his eyes were yellow and they were glowing. So I didn't know what that was. I had never known what a Sasquatch was. I never heard of anything like that. So my mind immediately went into a panic mode. What is this?
After all he had witnessed, telepathic communication with otherworldly beings, multidimensional Sasquatch, and the hypnotic control of those caught in their presence, one question remained, hanging in the shadows of his experiences. If such forces truly exist just beyond our perception, how much of the world we think we know is only an illusion? On Animal Planet, the investigation team follows every lead with careful attention, especially when a local witness claims to have seen something impossible. During their visit to a snowy mountain resort, they meet Steve, an experienced snowboarder who spends much of his time on these slopes. What began as a routine day on the mountain quickly turned into a moment he would never forget.
Hey, Steve.
Hey.
Hey.
How y'all doing?
Hey. So Craig Clemmers told us that you had a sighting up here.
Yes. Yes, I have. I was snowboarding here. I come snowboarding here a lot. It was actually about over there, far into the trees. Late February. I was snowboarding at Brenton Woods. Decided to take a break and catch my breath. I looked across the valley and I saw something coming out of the wood line. Something walking bipedally.
The investigators leaned in as Steve described what he had seen. If it was walking on two legs, how could he be sure it wasn't a person? Steve shook his head. The movement was wrong. It crossed the deep snow far too fast, gliding over terrain that should have slowed any human to a crawl. Even from hundreds of yards away, its height was unmistakable. Whatever stepped out of that tree line was massive, and it was moving with a purpose that sent a chill straight through him.
Made the hair stand on the back of my neck, you know what I mean?
So if it was on two legs, how could you rule out for sure it was a human?
The way it moved, the way it acted, how fast it went through the snow. I mean, there was deep snowpack.
And you knew for sure this thing had to be super tall.
From where I was and how far away I was, it had to be something big.
Well, how far of a distance is that?
At least a few hundred yards.
Steve described the terrain as buried under layers of heavy, frozen powder, deep enough to stop any ordinary person in their tracks. Yet the figure moved straight across it, climbing diagonally uphill with calm, effortless strides. There was no slipping, no slowing, no sign of strain. Where a person would have been crawling and gasping for breath, this thing walked as if the mountain itself offered no resistance at all. From a distance, it may have resembled a man, but nothing about its movement belonged to one.
And this thing was walking through the snow?
Walking through the snow, not having a hard time with it, just kind of nonchalantly getting through it.
Was it going downhill?
Going uphill.
Going uphill?
Uphill on the diagonal, yes.
Walking
Just walking through it like it was nothing. If a person were to walk through the snow, you'd be hands and knees and just struggling through it. And this was just like it was nothing.
Okay, now I'm starting to see why you thought this was so unusual. Because you're just seeing a bipedal thing walk across. It looks like a person, probably.
Yep.
But the circumstances here are...
Given the speed and ease with which the figure moved, the team concluded that Steve had likely witnessed something extraordinary. He had never seen anyone there before, and the behavior matched classic Sasquatch traits. The bowl-shaped valley below, dotted with greenery breaking through the snow, looked like the perfect spot for a night investigation, one that could reveal even more of the mysterious presence in these woods.
At speed, doing what he saw the figure doing, I think that we can pretty safely say he probably saw one. He's never seen anybody over there before, so it seems that he most likely saw a Sasquatch. And for us, that's a good start to the expedition. Some people have seen Sasquatches right here in this bowl-shaped valley. And looking around, down there, it's a lot lower, there's a lot more greenery poking up through the snow. This might be a good spot to do a night investigation.
As the team pushed deeper into the wilderness, the vast resort still faintly behind them, they reached a spot that felt right for a wood knock. The sharp crack echoed through the valley, and moments later, a reply seemed to answer from the darkness. Cliff scanned with a thermal scope, but the icy terrain made everything glow white. Whatever had responded was out there, just beyond sight.
Oh yeah, we've seen deer. Bobo and I, we keep hiking and hiking, and I feel like I can still see the resort right behind me. This place is huge.
Hey, listen, we found a good place to do a knock. Can you listen?
Oh yeah. And I'll get the bat out and I'll do a reply.
done.
Wow, yeah, we heard it. Done.
You get anything out there, Cliff?
No. It's hard to tell, though, because anything that isn't icy cold shows up so brightly.
The sudden sound cut through the night like a crack of thunder. The team stopped instantly. That was no falling branch. It was a knock. It had come from across the river, somewhere to the north-northwest. Echoes bounced off the valley walls, but even through the distortion, the source was unmistakably powerful. Then it happened again. Louder. Closer. The group exchanged tense glances. Whatever was out there wasn't hiding anymore, and it was answering back.
Oh, that's a knock.
You hear that?
Sound like that way.
That direction.
That way. I think we just got a knock.
Yeah, we heard something.
Wait, you heard it too? If you heard it, that means it's really loud at the source.
We know there's a lot of echoing going on here, but we feel like it's to the north.
Northwest of us, across the river.
Remember, there are very few people actually worse at directions than she is. Just take the opposite of what she says. Oh, there it was again.
Dude, that's a squatch.
The team froze as a single hollow crack snapped through the cold air. Everyone heard it. That meant it had to be powerful at the source. Then another knock rang out, clear, sharp, unmistakable. The valley swallowed the echo, but the message lingered. Something was out there and it was answering them. Was it just an animal moving through the snow, or had Steve and the team finally come face to face with something far more mysterious and far more dangerous lurking in the valley? On Travel Channel, adventure often comes with unexpected thrills, and nowhere is that more true than on PR's island. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a sudden chill ran down the back of those exploring its hidden corners, a reminder that some places carry stories that are as eerie as they are unforgettable.
Here kind of stood up and my chills down my back. They're all over Prince of Wales Island.
PR's island isn't just a paradise. It's a realm with boundaries of its own. Those who enter quickly sense that the island is determined to keep humans away, guarding its territory with an unseen force. One wrong step could turn curiosity into danger.
They want to keep humans away. They want to keep the humans out of their territory. So it could be dangerous.
Bill Muser, a lifelong outdoorsman with a keen eye for the wild, had an encounter that would change him forever. While out hunting with his cousin, they packed into a small motorboat, drifting across the lake and exploring its quiet edges. Planning to build a trapper's cabin as their base, they soon realized the woods were not as empty as they had thought. Something, or someone, was watching, turning their peaceful adventure into a tense, unforgettable ordeal.
You know, we packed in a small motor and tooled around the lake a little bit and explored.
As they settled in, strange sounds began to echo through the trees, hinting that the woods were far from empty. Every shadow and rustle seemed to warn them that something, or someone, was watching.
Hearing some banging on a tree across the way.
They struck the tree, and almost immediately a response came from the shadows, sharp, deliberate, and chilling. The sound seemed to move through the forest, echoing off trunks and undergrowth in a way that no ordinary animal could produce. The air grew heavy with unease, as if the woods themselves were alive, watching their every move. Each pause, each rustle, made it clear. They were not alone, and whatever was out there was aware of them.
We would pound a little bit and it would pound back at us. 3, maybe 4 good whacks at a time. I don't know any animal that can do anything like that. There was something in the woods whacking the trees.
After hearing whispers of strange creatures roaming the area, Bill Muser felt a shiver of realization. The eerie sounds, the footprints, and the strange occurrences scattered across the island all hinted at something far beyond the ordinary. He couldn't deny the possibility that something massive and elusive was moving through the woods, watching them from the shadows and leaving its mark on the wilderness.
I believe it was a Bigfoot, especially with all the other sightings that have happened on the island.
Bigfoot leaves unmistakable signs, marking its territory in ways that have puzzled researchers for decades. Since the 1950s, sightings and field reports, including those studied by Bigfoot researcher Cliff Barrickman, describe a repeated behavior, powerful knocks against trees or logs. These sounds aren't random. Much like gorillas clapping to warn their troop, the knocks appear deliberate, a form of communication signaling intrusion or change. But for those who hear it firsthand, curiosity quickly turns to dread. The sound doesn't invite investigation, it warns. A hollow echo through the forest, reminding anyone nearby they've stepped into territory that isn't theirs.
It's been noted as far back as the late 1950s that Bigfoot tends to bang on logs or do something like that. We call it tree knocking. It's very often deployed to let the other Sasquatches in the area know that something has changed, like maybe somebody's come into an area. A similar behavior has been well documented in gorillas. They clap their hands to warn the other gorillas that, hey, intruders are in the area, you know? I think Sasquatches use this form of communication for something similar, but sometimes those tree knocks can be very threatening to the humans.
On rare occasions, those venturing into the woods, whether hunting, foraging, or simply exploring, have reported hearing mysterious knocks echoing through the trees. The sounds appear without warning, sharp and deliberate, leaving even the most experienced outdoorsman uneasy. In the silence that follows, the forest seems to hold its breath, as if something unseen is watching their every move.
There have been a small number of cases when people have been out of the woods hunting or foraging, and then they hear these knocking noises.
A sudden echo of sharp, mysterious sounds pulled the hunters deeper into the forest, each step heavier than the last. From the shadows, a massive, silent figure emerged, radiating an undeniable presence that made the air thrum with tension. Without a sound, the message was clear. The woods belonged to something far older and more powerful than they were intruding at their own risk. As the shadows deepened and the forest seemed to watch their every move, one thought echoed louder than anything else. What truly lurks in these woods? And would anyone survive if they dared to find out? On DMAX UK, the search for Bigfoot takes BFRO investigators into the remote forests of southwest Washington, where sightings have long sparked curiosity. The team meets James at the spot of his encounter, where heavy footsteps suddenly approach from behind. He recalls a figure standing 8.5 to 9 feet tall, with shoulders nearly 4 feet wide, a presence unlike anything human. Could this trail be a regular crossing for Sasquatch? And is the team close to capturing proof of the legend?
Today, we're meeting James at the sighting location where he had his encounter. We want to see, is it a place where Sasquatches actually would come periodically?
As the sound of the footsteps approached closer, I knew whatever it was standing behind me right there at the top of the trail. It was impossibly large, approximately 8.5 to 9 feet tall, with shoulders spread approximately 4 feet wide.
The forest revealed a creature even larger than the one James had encountered. From over 100 yards away, it moved through the trees, each step shaking the ground with a deep, thudding rhythm. The sound of its footfalls carried a menacing weight, as if the very forest itself was warning anyone nearby. The memory of that night still sends chills through anyone who thinks about it, a haunting reminder of a presence that cannot be explained.
I saw one actually that was bigger than the one he saw, and when it walked around at over 100 yards away, I could hear its footfalls. Boom, boom, boom. It sounds like an elephant. When they are trying to intimidate you and they're stomping their feet as they walk, it's loud. I think you for sure saw and heard a Sasquatch that night.
Wow. Just makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck.
The team reached the Lewis River, where James's chilling sighting occurred, then moved upstream toward Lake Merwin. where every sound could travel for miles. The ridge to Amboy had a history of strange sightings, and tonight the forest was theirs alone. Closer to where mysterious vocalizations had echoed, every step carried tension as the team readied their strategies, hoping to provoke a response from whatever lurked unseen in the shadows.
This is where James's sighting happened, and I think that if we're going to do a night investigation here, we should move further upstream to this area near Lake Merwin. Lake Merwin would have excellent listening conditions. Our broadcast would be able to be heard for miles.
Oh,
because
yeah, because they bounce right off the lake.
Yeah, and this ridge between Lake Merwin and Amboy to the south actually has a number of sightings on it.
We have the place to ourselves, basically.
And you know, this is a lot closer to where we were the other night when we heard the vocalization.
Also, water investigations are a neat opportunity to do some creative Bigfooting. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. I'd like to give it a shot here.
The team readied themselves as the lake carried their calls back with deep, haunting echoes. From nearly 200 feet offshore, 2 heat signatures appeared along the distant shoreline. Movement too vague to make out, but impossible to ignore. Without hesitation, they steered toward shore, marking a coordinate and calling in backup. As they drew closer, the stretch of beach came into view, the same spot where strange activity had been reported before. Something unseen waited in the shadows, and the night was about to reveal it.
Hey, Cliff, are you out of the boat on the shore right now?
No, we're about 200 feet from shore in the lake.
Look to your left down the shoreline. There was just 2 hot spots on the shoreline.
I don't see anything, but hold on.
It could be elk, it could be deer, it could be a Bigfoot. I don't know. They were on the beach. It's just too far away for this thing to get any detail.
Let's get over there and find out.
All right, Bo, you said it was ahead of us to the left. We're going to push in the shore and take a GPS coordinate. I'll get that to you, and you meet us over there, all right?
Well, let's double time it over there.
The team anticipated where a Sasquatch might move, knowing higher ground offered a strategic vantage. An open clearing caught their attention, an ideal spot to send a call into the forest. When the sound echoed back, it wasn't a reflection of their own voice. Something deep in the shadows had answered, sharp and deliberate. Through radios, the team confirmed the response, and a tense excitement rippled through the group. The forest felt alive, every rustle and shadow charged with anticipation. Whatever was out there had made its presence unmistakably clear.
About to do a call.
Renee and Cliff, do you copy? I'm gonna do a howl.
Oh boy. Wait. That's not an echo.
That wasn't an echo.
From a high vantage point, the team scanned the area, senses on edge. Movements in the forest suggested the creatures might be closing in. Cliff listened intently. One of the team insisted it wasn't just an echo. Judging by his tone, he had to be taken seriously. Team members considered their own position. What sounded like a reflection of sound from their spot could easily differ from what was happening elsewhere. Every step, every rustle in the trees carried weight. The possibility of something unseen moving closer made the tension nearly tangible. In the silent pause that followed, the forest seemed to hold its breath.
Not the echo, I gotta believe him.
No, I'm with you. To what I heard from our location, to me, it was no doubt an echo, but they could be in a different position. They could be hearing something else.
Absolutely.
Whoa, come over here.
What'd you find?
Check it out, dude. That sound we heard, it sounded like it was coming from down in there. I thought maybe there was some trailer down in there, maybe some people, but there's nothing in between here and the lake except trees and a steep hillside.
I mean, it definitely came from that direction.
It came from that direction, absolutely.
As the night deepened, the forest held its secrets close. Shadows shifted, echoes answered calls, and unseen footsteps seemed to draw closer. Every rustle and thud suggested a presence just beyond sight, something massive, intelligent, and impossible to ignore. Could the team be standing on the edge of proof, or would the forest keep its legendary inhabitant hidden once more? Story 4. Meet Doug Morrison on Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, a lifelong Bigfoot enthusiast from Reedsport, Oregon, whose fascination with the legend began when he was a kid. Inspired by the famous Patterson-Gimlin film and his first Bigfoot book, Doug grew up believing the truth might be hiding deep in the forests. Years later, while hunting alone in the wilderness, that belief was put to the test when slow, heavy footsteps followed him along the tree line, moving when he moved, stopping when he stopped. At the time, Doug didn't think much of it.
I'm Doug Morrison. I live in Reedsford, Oregon. I've been into Bigfoot since I was a young kid. I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film when I was 7. I read my first book on Bigfoot when I was 7, and I've been into the Bigfoot TV shows and read books about it and stuff like that ever since I was a kid. I have had sounds when I was out hunting of something like in the tree lines that sounded like it was walking alongside of you, and if you stop, it would stop, but I'd never acquainted it to being a Bigfoot.
The night was unnaturally still. Each rustle of leaves or snapping twig amplified in the darkness. Doug and his wife lay in the open field beneath a bright moon, their small cocker spaniel suddenly stiffening, growling, and staring toward the tree line along the Satsa River. He swept his flashlight across the woods. Nothing moved. Yet the dog's agitation grew, and the calm no longer felt safe. Whatever was out there, it was watching, and it didn't want to be seen.
So while we were laying in the field looking at the stars, we had a small dog with us. He was a little cocker spaniel. And he started growling and showing his teeth, and his hackles went up, and he was pointing towards the Sayusla River in the woods there. And I had a flashlight with me, and I'd shine the flashlight around and did not see anything. There were no animals or anything that we could see. And he was getting a little more agitated, and it made my wife feel kind of creepy, so she asked if we could go back.
Doug and his wife returned to camp, and she decided to head to bed, slipping into the tent for the night. He stayed behind, settling by the campfire with a beer, enjoying the quiet while his back faced the Satsa River. Then came a sudden loud splash from the water behind him. At first, he thought it might have been a fish, or some animal leaping into the river. Grabbing his flashlight, he shined it across the surface, scanning for movement. Ripples danced on the water, but nothing else appeared. Still, something about the sound lingered in the air, echoing through the dark, and the river felt far less calm than before.
She decided to go to bed, and so she went into the tent and went to bed, and I sat out at the campfire to have a beer and just kind of kick back by the campfire. And while I was at the camp, sitting there, I had my back to the river. There was a large splash that happened in the river right behind it, where I was sitting. And I thought maybe an animal had jumped into the water, or maybe a fish jumped or something. So I went to take a look and see what it was, shine my light on the water, and I could see the ripples on the water, but I didn't see anything else out of the ordinary. So I felt it must have been a fish or something, so I went and sat back down, and about 3 to 5 minutes later, it did it again.
A loud splash erupted from the river behind Doug, followed by the sharp clink of rocks underwater. At first, he thought it was just pranksters tossing stones. He called out, laughed, and hid in the bushes, waiting. For minutes passed. Nothing moved. No one laughed. Just the river, silent under the moon. Shaken, Doug finally returned to the tent. Sleep felt safer, but that splash stayed with him long after the night went dark.
And it was followed by the sound of rocks clinking together, like it was underwater, which led me to believe something threw a large rock. So I thought maybe some kids were messing with us, so I yelled out that it was very funny, haha, you got me type of thing, and I hid in the bush that was right there to see if I could catch them doing it again. And I sat there for about 45 minutes and nothing else happened. At that point, I figured, you know what, it's getting late, time to go to bed. So I went and got in the tent and went to sleep.
As the last glow of light vanished from the tent, a terrifying sound shattered the night. Something right outside let out a scream that seemed to come from the very bones. It started deep and guttural, vibrating through the air like a warning, then surged into a piercing, high-pitched wail that echoed across the campsite. Every instinct screamed at Doug to move, yet he couldn't tear his eyes away. For a long, frozen moment, the forest itself seemed alive, watching, and whatever had made that sound wanted him to know it was there.
The tent, and just as that light went away from the tent, something right outside the tent screamed, and it was the most ungodly sound I've ever heard in my life. The scream started as a very low guttural sound that it reverberated inside your body, and it made your insides shake. And it was a long moaning sound that went from a low pitch all the way to a very high screaming pitch and then lowered back down.
He stepped out into the quiet of the campsite, scanning for any sign of disturbance. In the soft sand, he spotted impressions. Not clear footprints, just shallow craters pressed into the earth. About 20 feet from the tent, a large branch caught his eye. Roughly 6 feet high and thick, it had been snapped at the base and twisted around itself, the sound of the break still echoing in his mind. Around the nearby trees, the underbrush had been flattened, smashed down by something impossible to identify. Whatever had passed through the campsite had left its mark, but Doug had no idea what it could have been.
And I went out and looked around the camp to see if anything had been disturbed, and you could see footprints in the sand, but it wasn't defined. It was just a crater in the sand. And what I did find was about 20 feet from the tent, a branch that was probably 2 inches in diameter. It was about 6 feet high, had been broken right at the base of the tree, and it had been twisted around 2 times. It made what they call a green stick break. And I looked around that area, and the salal that was around the trees had been smashed down, but by what, I couldn't tell you.
The question of what had passed through the area that night remains unanswered. Were the footprints and broken branches the work of an animal, or something far stranger that had been watching them? They may have returned to safety, but the memory of that scream, the splash in the river, and the shadows in the trees will linger long in their minds. The forests grow darker, and the mountains hold their secrets tighter. What you've seen tonight is only a fragment of the unknown. Keep watching, because on Channel Name, the shadows are alive, the mysteries are far from over, and the next revelation could be closer than you think.